Deoksugung is a magnificent palace located in the small neighborhood of Jeong-dong. Small, yes, but filled with lots of significant history. Not what you would expect for such a small place.
One of my favorite neighborhoods in this tiny area. It's not a very big dong, but in this small area there is so much Korean history.
It's a neighborhood where modern Western culture first took root.
The first Western embassies came, the first Western schools, Western medical institutions, first Western churches, they all arrived here.
And I'll explore this dong with a slightly different approach, focusing on the juicy history with no one less than my dear friend Jacob.
Goedemorgen. Hey, dat is lang geleden.
Maybe listening devices, maybe they're trying to listen in on the American Embassy legation, who knows?
This hood has surprising stories that you surely want to know. Trust me, I didn't know anything before I came here.
I do live here, yes, 2 years now.
In this series, I explore every neighborhood of Seoul, a crazy more than 400 of them. And Jeong-dong, number 11 already, is located on the edge of the old city wall, inside and not far from the western gate. There are 1,000 options to get here, but City Hall Station is probably the easiest. Then you can take exit 10, 11, 12, 1, 2 or 3. Now let's do this. To understand this neighborhood, we must know why it became of any significance. And that's why we start here at the very first old Russian embassy.
King Gyeongbukgung, after his wife Queen Min was killed by the Japanese in 1895, he and his son Seongjong, they fled Gyeongbuk Palace. They felt they couldn't live there anymore. It wasn't a good place to live. It had a bad vibe about it, plus also they felt unsafe. So they left Gyeongbuk Palace and they came right here to the Russian legation. And here for 18 months, for a year and a half, King Gyeongbukgung and his son Prince Seongjong lived in this embassy. A little bit like Julian Assange in the Ecuadorian embassy in London. They lived here hoping to be safe from foreign enemies, and while they were here they had Deoksugung Palace built for the new royal palace. Just down the hill there you can see that's the back of the American embassy.
It's right over there.
It's right there, it's just over that wall there, and now you can see it's covered with this, the stone wall is surmounted by this very, very tall iron fence, but back then that didn't exist. Current ambassador still lives there. That is in fact one of the longest held US embassy properties anywhere in the world. The Americans were the first embassy, Western embassy, to be set up in Korea in 1882. A couple of years ago, a woman who was reportedly perhaps mentally ill, she wasn't in a sound state, climbed over the US Embassy wall into the residence and was found wandering around. And so they said, well, we don't want this to happen again. So they built this huge fence over the top.
It's quite open, I must say.
It's a big property.
It's not the place where you would lay down with your bikini in summer.
It's very open to the public.
So the king took refuge in a Russian embassy, which was a stone's throw away from the US embassy. What a surprise. This is also seconds away from Korea's first A-class girls' high school.
So here across the road, this old gate you see, this is the campus of Ewha Girls High School, this gate is an old relic of the neighborhood. It gives a sense of what Jeong-dong would have looked like more than 100 years ago.
The tree must have been there.
Well, now this one, probably yes, because I don't know exactly how old it is, but I can show you a tree that is even older, and we do know roughly how old it is. This is...
Oh, it's right over here.
Yeah, exactly. You could call it the oldest living witness in Jeong-dong. It saw everything that happened here.
Canadians are lucky with such a beautiful tree. The front doors. Oh yeah.
520 years old now, but that was 520 years in 1976. But it's still living. I mean, the leaves are still green. And also we have these buttresses that hang up, hold up the huge branches because they're so heavy. Otherwise they might crack or fall down to the ground.
This tree has seen it all. And by now, I wouldn't be surprised if it was the first tree in Jeong-dong, huh? The tree is in one of my favorite streets during fall. Check out these colors, the striking foliage and the warmth and coziness of it all. This street leads straight up to the old West Gate, well, where it once used to be.
So here we are at the entrance to Jeong-dong. Electrified trams and cars. Suddenly everyone's trying to squish through the small gate. And so the Japanese colonial rulers of Seoul said, you know what? We're going to demolish this gate. And so I think it was about 1911, quite early, maybe 1915.
I see.
This whole gate was simply demolished. Goodness knows, I don't know where the stones ended up. And of course that's great for traffic flow, but sad for history.
It is.
So here we are, more or less where the gate was. In fact, there's a little plaque that reminds you of it.
Oh no.
That's a big reminder. So all gates have two names. One is a direction name, in this case the West Big Gate, but they also have an official name. This one is called Doni-mun, which means Loyalty Gate. But it also has a surprising third name, Shinmun, New Gate. Because of all the 4 gates, this was the newest one.
Have a look at this sign. First language is Chinese. This is the oldest existing Chinese church in Korea. In fact, it's been here since 1912.
A Chinese church?
Yeah, so it's a church that serves a Chinese-speaking, ethnic Chinese community.
It will not be the last, first thing we come across. A lot more exciting things and first things are about to come. And if you're into quiet walks, you can even follow the old city wall.
Imagine 4 mountains, and then the gates are at the 4 low places between the mountains. So you have to go up and down, up and down, and up and down to do the whole city. But in about 8 or 9 hours, if you go quickly enough,
have you done it?
Can do the whole, I've never done it in one day because, you know, my legs aren't that strong. I'm not that much of a physical exercise person. So
I'm sorry to bring you, Yaki. Sorry.
I've done parts of it. No, I can do parts of it.
Okay.
But going up and down 4 mountains in one day, that's a little bit too much for me.
Didn't I tell you we're going to do the whole thing today?
Oh God, no. Now this church here, this is the Jeong-dong Methodist Church, and it's actually the first church built in the style of a Western church in Korea. There were other churches before, but they were in Hanok buildings. But this is the first church built in a Western style.
Not far from the first Methodist church is the original location of the first Baejis school for boys. What a surprise. Let's add those to the map. But another remarkable building affected my eyes. The Russian embassy. For a long time and for several reasons, there was no Russian embassy until after the fall of the Soviet Union and restored diplomatic relations.
They wanted to come back to Jeongdong. In fact, they wanted to go back to the original location where the tower was. But since that overlooks, it's on a hill and it overlooks the American embassy, the Americans, I think, were not very comfortable with the idea. And the Koreans also saw the problem in that. The Russian embassy was first, I think, in Gangnam.
Yeah.
And then eventually they built a brand new building. We can't see it yet, but we'll see it very soon.
Okay.
A brand huge building with a giant ball on the top of it. That giant building behind it with the ball on top, that is the Russian embassy. Chinese embassy may be the largest one in Korea now, and the Russian embassy may be the second largest.
So what's in that bowl?
Yeah, well, a lot of people think all kinds of communications devices, right? So satellite broadcasting or receiving, maybe listening devices, maybe they're trying to listen in on the American embassy's legation, who knows?
Artillery gun. Like the one in the National Assembly, right? Do you know the story?
Yeah, I've heard of it, I've never seen it, yeah.
There might be an artillery gun in there.
Oh, gosh.
There is actually one on Yuksam building.
And I was going to say, there are still a lot on the tops of the tallest buildings in Seoul, anti-aircraft guns.
Yep.
Just in case the North Koreans decide to start something.
Let's take a moment. All this info. I've walked here 100 times and never knew any background story. But do you need to know all of this to enjoy the beauty? I leave it up to you.
Hello, good morning.
If you don't mind, stay by yours and then hear your English speaking.
You want to hear my explanation?
Yeah.
Are you okay with that?
I'm okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm filming though.
Yeah,
Is that okay?
Filming.
Yeah, because it's really interesting that you explain something about the Korean in English to someone.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, sure.
Oh, thank
There
you.
you go. Now you have another fan.
If you turn right and walk up the hill, you end up at the back gate of the British Embassy. This tiny house, really, really tiny. Look, if I'm lying inside, I can almost touch both walls with my arms and legs. This tiny house was built sometime, presumably after the Korean War, presumably without a building permit.
Oh.
It goes all the way back and it's very, very narrow.
Who's living in here?
A very old woman. I've seen her a couple of times on the street.
Uh-huh.
I've tried asking her a few questions, but I don't think she's listened. She hears very well. I think she's almost deaf.
Oh, I see.
Yeah, and it's even more narrow here. You can imagine you could lie down and easily touch both walls.
Right.
Yeah.
I could climb up like this.
Exactly. And I think there's a different family on the second floor. I think it's actually 2 houses. kimchi and the doenjang and whatever else she has in there. So on the one side you've got the British Embassy, the other side the palace. But again, as I said before, we now have two walls. Imagine there was a time when there was only one wall, separated with a gate separating the embassy from the palace. Right? So this walk is, in a sense, in my understanding of history, completely fictional, because there were no two walls. There was one wall with a gate. And so Gyeongbukgung could have walked easily, without having to go down the street.
Just going through the garden.
Yeah, he could have gone through the garden, opened the gate, and bam, he's there at the British Embassy.
Okay.
He could have said, can I have a cup of tea?
No ticket necessary?
Well, as you can see, it's totally fenced off. Right?
Hence the man here.
And that's why there's a security man. So
What?
as soon as you try to open that gate, that man will come out and say, hold on, you have to go to the front gate and buy a ticket and come through there. I don't know. He's not coming out yet. Oh dear, Bart! How far are you going to get? Sometimes people forget that it was the embassies that came first and then the palace, and people get it confused and they think, oh, the embassies came to this location because the palace did. No, the palace came to this location because the embassy.
So it's a brand new palace.
And so it's the newest of all the palaces.
Yeah.
In fact,
It wasn't that there was nothing. There was already a small palace called Gyeongbukgung, but it hadn't been used for 270 years until Gyeongbukgung moved in after his refuge in the Russian legation. He then renamed it Deoksugung and expanded it immensely, hence a new
yeah,
palace.
in fact, for a long time they called it the Shingung, meaning the new palace. And so he came and moved in here in 1897, and he had himself declared emperor because he said, now I'm on the same level as the Chinese emperor and the Japanese emperor. Three North Asian emperors. Period of empire didn't last very long, as we know, and it all ended with the Japanese takeover and annexation of Korea.
The next time when you come here with your date, you can't only impress them with this magical location, but also with tons of interesting facts. As I said, small but rich with history. If you are the view kind, you can enjoy this dong from City Hall's rooftop, or from Cafe Coffee and Cigarette. This time, identifying the neighborhood wasn't tricky. King Gyeongbukgung meets Westerners. It covers most of the load, I think. Next time, I get back to the typical iGoBart style. Getting lost in Jeong-dong and interacting with many exciting people. See you then. Houdoe.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome, Bob.
It was a pleasure. It was an honor to hear from a foreigner so much about the history of Korea.
Yeah.
So thank you guys for watching. See you in the next Dong episode. Houdoe.
You go, Bart.